This is an It's Your Break production, so sit back and take a break. The following show may contain language and content that may not be suitable for a younger audience. Listener discretion advised. Hey, you there. Come on, take a break with us. So, what's in store for this break? Let's find out together, here on It's Your Break.
Welcome to It's Your Break. Hi, I'm Jonathan Mertz, and yeah. So this episode was totally planned to be all filmed like the previous episodes of this season, and then technical difficulties set in. So my conversation that I'm going to have with Bjoern Kommerell, the famous photographer Bjoern Kommerell, well, it didn't get videoed, except for a small portion. And I'll be releasing those as clips, but I'm not going to be able to do the entire podcast release that way. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry that you're just listening to me talk and you may be seeing some pictures of Bjoern and some of the pictures that he's taken. But that's pretty much the way the episode just happened to go. So, hey, sometimes things don't always work out the way they should, but you got to learn to adapt. Anyways, on with the show.
It's Your Break will return right after this.
Hey, it's Bubba, and I'm here with Mertz. Thank you for letting me take over for a second.
Not a problem, Bubba.
Well, I'll tell you what. You know, Mertz, me and you have been sitting here for a minute, and our It's Your Break family has been growing. I said it once before, and thank you very much for doing this whole project and getting it starting running, and I'm kind of making it look good.
Yeah, whatever.
Mick Gripe, how did you get in here?
I was sitting right across from you the entire time. We all have microphones.
He's got a point.
Yeah, I do. That's why I do my McGripe scrape of the moment. Also on the It's Your Break podcast. It's a lot better than Bubba's.
I don't know about that.
Oh, hold on. If we're going to get into who has the best podcast, it's obviously me.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever, Mertz.
What do you mean, whatever? Without me, you two would not exist.
You do have a point.
Yeah, I think so. You got us this time.
Anyways, check us out online at itchyyourbreak.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at It's Your Break. And also subscribe to our podcast. Just search It's Your Break inside of iTunes, and you'll see all of our podcasts, whether it's Bubba's, McGripes, or just the normal It's Your Break.
Subscribe to the It's Your Break podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. And now, back to It's Your Break.
Welcome to It's Your Break. Hi, I'm Jonathan Mertz, and today's guest is one of the most sought-after Hollywood photographers, Bjoern Kommerell. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
And you know, it's such a fascinating thing to see what you have accomplished. But what I want to do first is kind of just take everything back to the beginning and find out, where did you grow up? And then how did you get into photography, if you don't care?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, personally, the getting there stories are the most interesting stories.
Oh, absolutely.
You have stories like, oh, yeah, a celebrity walked in the door, did a photo shoot. Oh, yeah, I got an award. Boring story, there's no struggle and whatnot. It's like when you start out, this is kind of the fun part, right? Where you discover your passion for it and you just get fascinated from the darkroom. And that's how it started for me. So I think in 1980.
Oh, wow.
I had friends. I'm old. I might not look it, but I'm a Highlander. I'm old. So in 1980.
Yeah, I'm 41, so I feel you. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I was 12 years old, and my neighbors had a darkroom, and the whole family, they were all into the arts and whatnot, and they shot black and white film, and I attended a session where a negative became a print with developer, stop bath and fixer, and then you hang it up to dry. And out of this white sheet of paper, there was this beautiful image. And I thought, that's so awesome. How cool is this? I want to do this so my desire was to create something that's worthy of this process. And my mother always had these photo books laying around from Robert Frank, Cartier-Bresson, like all those, Diane Arbus. And when I was a little kid, I would suck my thumb, and next to the kids' book, I would look through these photo books. And I do believe that subconsciously, my vision got cultivated very playfully while I was sucking my thumb.
Huh.
Because I would just look at these images in the books, and I thought, okay, now I'm 12 years old. Maybe I do something like a photo like it in those books. So I thought, these books, right? Maybe that's the Brassai or all these Magnum photographers, Robert Capa, and I thought, maybe I can do that. And that was the initiation. And then I got my first camera. My parents were all excited. Here's the camera. Here's black and white film, 50 millimeter lens. And I'm like, oh, good. And I would just shoot stuff. What do you do as a kid? You shoot stuff. And like, I want to go in the dark room. It was all about the dark room because that's where the magic happens, right? You see the big image and you get 8 by 10 paper. It was big. 11 by 14. That's a poster. And that got me into it. And the process was not as instant as it is now. Nowadays, a 12-year-old, I'm like, oh, photography, click, there it is. And you got it. You called it into existence. And there's not this fun little delay. Did I do the exposure right? Oh, how did the negative turn out? Oh, it worked. See, the celebration that you didn't screw up.
Or the smell of the chemicals, that aroma, you get used to it after a while.
It's an entire universe. The
yeah.
smell of the chemicals. You're nervous. It's kind of like when you have your test at school. Did I pass? Did I expose the picture right? Because I was never the most precise person. I would take my skin and like, okay, let's plus one stop. We should be fine. And everything manual. I never used automatic ever in my life.
Wow.
Because when I was 12, my buddies said like, automatics for losers. We don't do everything manual. See, and if the first person that teaches you is like, okay, we're driving stick shift, right? There's no automatic here. That's for losers. You got to know what you're doing, son. And they all had fancy cameras. Those guys that had the darkroom. They had Leicas and Olympus. So I got a Japanese Yashica camera from my parents who are musicians and certainly didn't have a lot of money, but loved that I'm excited about this. So, one thing leads to another, and then I started to build my own darkroom, like in a little closet space in the basement. And it was a hobby for, I would say, probably like 15 years. From 1980 to the mid-90s, it was just a hobby. And I thought, it's so precious. I don't want to make it into a profession because I had the fear that if you turn your hobby into a profession, that you lose the fun of it. Somehow, I don't know where I picked that up. I think I might have picked it up from people that I've met by interning in ad agencies and stuff I did. I have a master in economics because I thought, well, you're safe. You can do something with it, and it's so boring. Like, well, what am I doing? This is a boring life. Do I want to be chief crunching numbers for KPMG or McKinsey Consulting? Those were the jobs to get back in the day. Buddy, you get 6 digits right out of college. Like, to live in a shitty-ass hotel and take care of the internal accounting of some orange juice company somewhere in the Midwest, well, I don't really give a rat's ass about if they make more profits or not. It's like, they're really like, it makes no purpose, creates no motivation for me in life. And at that moment, I thought, what about photography? So I submitted half a year before I graduated from university, from grad school. I submitted one photo. Only time I ever submitted something to a contest. And I won the whole thing.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
So, and it was a photo of a girl in a bar, and the girl was a singer. Because my buddy directed music videos. His name's Cameron Casey, and he was a hotshot music video director who I met through friends, to cut it short. And he always invited me, come along, be on my set and hang out with us. We love your photos and you're a cool guy. So he would let me always take photos on his sets. So that was my first in. His music videos. He was just a very good spirit in my life because he would just let me do stuff. And this photo that I submitted was actually offset. It was during a lunch break. And we were in a British pub. And the singer's name was Lavinia Jones. And she just ordered a drink at the pub. So in the background was a guy smoking and another guy just looking a bit weird and posters on the wall, smoke in the room. We're in the 90s, you could still smoke inside. And I just blurred a little bit the foreground because I love movie perspective, right? So I shot this shot with the 60th of a second, which usually blurs a little bit if you're not careful, especially I had a longer lens at the time, a 200 millimeter lens. 200 milliliter, I drank afterwards.
Yeah, I was going to say you drank.
The 200 millimeter lens I did first and then the bind of Guinness or what it was. So, and I thought, it turned out cool. I didn't know the do's and do nots. I just wanted to create something beautiful. And so this photo, like, it looks cool. It's geometrically nicely composed, and then developed it, submitted to the contest, and won. So I won money, which was awesome, and I won self-confidence.
That is really cool.
Too. So you graduate from university and you think, what am I doing? Like, I just won this contest. Why not give it a shot, man? And I would look at these photos of Herb Ritz, for instance, who would shoot a Tom Cruise at the pier of Malibu with black and white, 60s of a second, little blurry, just just cool portraits that weren't perfect. It was the grunge era. The Nirvana was the shit, and Anton Corbijn was the coolest black and white portrait photographer that would shoot every Rolling Stone cover, and sometimes they were a bit blurry, and nobody gave a fuck. They were just, everybody was just, it's all about art and catch a moment. So I thought, maybe I can do this. So that encouraged me. Peter Lindbergh inspired me big time. I had all this, there was a book called 10 Women by Peter Lindbergh. He shot the Pirelli calendar. And the photos of it, I ripped this whole book apart and plastered the photos all over my kitchen. Because I thought those were the supermodels in black and white in the desert of El Mirage. And I thought, create something that holds up to this would be like the ultimate. So that was the goal set, to create something that these guys did. And so then I came to the US and I knew one guy, my music video guy, Cameron Casey. And he's like, whoa, come on, we'll shoot Chaka Khan next week. I'm like, all right. So I'm all excited and walk around the set, shoot some stuff. And then Chaka Khan's like, are you German? I spreche Deutsch. Ich auch. So then she would let me in. So then, cool. And then I got cooler images from Chaka Khan using the lighting that was there on the set. So at the time, I wasn't too versatile. Like, I wasn't technically not as, like, light years away from where I am now.
Right.
I would just use the stuff that the gaffers had. But I was so excited about lighting. Like, it looks so cool. Can I use this? Can I shoot this? And she was down. They were down. So cool images emerged out that she even loved and hung up in her office, how I found out later on, which was like, I felt like being made, like being knighted. Like, really?
Oh,
my
really
photo
cool.
is like in your office above your desk? Like, fuck yeah, this is... And this was back in the days when I didn't even charge money, I was just a guy having fun trying stuff out, and I used the money from the contest, that got me by. And I saw the money from the contest as kind of like my budget to create my own workshop. So I would show up on movie sets, indie movies. Like, I do your set stills for free. But then I would watch what would the gaffers do, the cinematographers. What film are you using? What are you doing? So I got the same film, processes the same way. Also shot my black and white, and I just learned all the interdependency, what happens when, right? So I never saw a photo school from the inside. So I'm entirely self-taught and by volunteering on sets at the beginning.
That is so cool to hear how that story just, progressed all the way from your childhood getting addicted and watching the process from the dark room, which is a lost art. It really is.
Damn, right? I have these romantic memories, like, what if the dark room would be still there? And because it's a very meditative act.
Right.
When you're in the dark room, you just
Right.
you don't need a meditation app.
And how many times did you curse somebody for breaking in the door and exposing it too much light?
I did it in LA. My first apartment was on Hollywood Boulevard on Fairfax. And I did it. There was a tiny little space between the bathroom and my living room / bedroom. It was a studio. That was all there is. For $600, I rented that thing. It was awesome. Did the trick. And I'm telling you, in my first 4 years, and after I started my business, all the Tom Wellings and the Mike Eppses and the, I don't know, Ian Gomez's, whatnot, they all came. The Johnny Knoxvilles, they all knocked on that darn door. They came to that little space, and I shot them and developed their photos back then in black and white in the 90s in this little dark room next to my bathroom.
Oh, that's really cool. That is too cool.
It was fun times.
So, out of everything that you've done so far, what has probably been the highlight of your career?
There's different highlights. I mean, the highlights is always okay. There's certain photos that you have created that are just, oh, wow, look at what came out. And sometimes there's highlights of the process, that the process itself was magic. There was so much love and creativity in there, and I just had a big smile on my face the whole time. Sometimes when you shoot like Elton John, I was so excited.
Oh yeah,
John and shit, and that was not like how I envisioned it. It was more like a business transaction, because at that time, like I'm not a David LaChapelle yet, who is like a world-renowned, top 10 in the. This is like the Roger Federers of what I do, right?
Right.
So, from Roger Federer to Djokovic, when Roger Federer shoots Djokovic, different energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but when I came in, I was like, all right, okay, 5 minutes. And so, sure, all my buddies and my parents were like, dude, you shot Elton John, man, that's so exciting. And I'm like, shoot itself was all right, It's not the most creative endeavor I've done in my life, but after all, it's kind of like, well, but it happened. It was kind of like wishful, I put it out there on my vision board. I wanted to do it, so I did it. So, and then there's these photo shoots that just are photos that emerge out of nowhere. You're just having fun. It's when you get in the zone and just are with somebody, and the process is fun. There's a magnificent actor. His name is Warren Cole, for instance. He was on Shades of Blue with Ray Liotta and J-Lo.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last thing he's done. And that would be an example. I just connected so much. We told each other stories, whatnot. And it's just every picture. I mean, there were 200 great shots. We're like, which one are we going to use? They're all so good. The process was fun. Every image is great. And that's a highlight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's highlights in the post. Like sometimes you do a great photo and you don't even know it while it's happening. And later on, you find out, oh, wow, okay, that was really cool. And then there's a story with it. This tall guy knocks on my door named Joe. And he says, well, I'm working construction. I did acting before and I went to Carnegie Mellon, but I'm going to construct. This is the last time I give this a shot. If this doesn't work out, screw out. Joe Manganiello. So
Really?
I'm like, okay, cool. So back then I was a guerrilla shooter running around Hollywood Boulevard. It's like next to Hotel Cafe or whatnot. Across from the strip joint, there's a little alley. Let's go in here. Let's do photos there. Down in the metro station. That was my thing. I was like a stray dog, and I knew where to find cool lighting everywhere. I could write a guide I can still write a guide for here 200 locations where you have really awesome portrait lighting with a cinematic touch that are for free. So I run around with him, and then, he gets the photos, and then sure enough, 4 weeks later, 2 months later, it's like, oh, I chopped my hair off. I got 2 acting gigs off the photos. Let's do more. Okay, boom. Did more. And then he calls me, oh, I booked One Tree Hill, booked this. And sure enough, then I get a call from People magazine. Like, can we have these photos from Joe Manganiello? I'm like, well, what happened? So I call Joe. What happened? Dude, I booked True Blood. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And then, boom. So I'm like, okay, let's do a couple of photo shoots before you blow up, because you will be out of reach. And I was right.
Right.
Because this man is tough to, I've tried, text back and forth. Hey, come on, I got a loft in downtown now. Rather come to my birthday party, but a photo shoot later. So it's really tough when people get so busy and overwhelmed and requests from this to that but once in a while it works. And I think this is kind of the muscle that I love to have, to establish relationships that you bypass all this my people talk to your people world. Mm-hmm. That you can just pick up the phone. It's like, if you got time on the weekend, I've got time too. Let's just create some beautiful stuff. And then you got your publicity photos, and and we create some great images. So that it's not sometimes it can, when it's from hedged up from the corporate side, it can become really more like a business deal rather than a creative photo shoot. When you have publicists, managers, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And then that destroys a little bit the fun. So much more fun when I say, hey, Jonathan, you got time on Sunday?
Oh, absolutely.
Come over and we'll just create some stuff. So it's fun, right?
Right.
So, okay. So rather create that way, because there's less calculus. Because I believe calculus is sometimes between you and your happiness. Because with calculus, there's other expectations. You don't do it just for the sake of doing it. So that intrinsic motivation is not genuine, because there's this, what's in it for me? When you know what I'm saying? Like this, if you do a thing, like the 2 little kids that just put a stick in the river and let it float and just make a race, my stick against your stick. I did this when I was little, and came way too late for lunch. And time flew by, and we just had fun. No calculus. There was no money or anything to gain other than, this is kind of fun.
Just living in the moment.
Like you let a balloon in the air. There's nothing to win. You just let it up and you're like, oh, cool. And you smile. And, then somebody comes, it's a great idea. We should make money with it. And all of a sudden that innocent joy, is out the window.
Right.
So and that's what I'm trying to create with people. Like when they come to me for portraits, like just to enroll them, to get them into a state of mind that they forget that there's like, I need photos for publicity. Here are my fans and my Instagram. It's like, why don't you just have some, forget all that for a second. Just let's play a little bit. Can I try something? Can we do a little, it's just a test. Would you be okay with, Jonathan, I just test something with you? Just testing.
Sure.
And then sure, right?
Right.
You play around, and there you go. All of a sudden, the fun. The 2 kids, the kid and the person comes out that just has fun creating, and that's so crucial to tickle that out of a person. And when that works, that's the best. Then all the creative treasure box opens up, and then the good photos and the good portraits emerge. And it's, that's the reason why I do it. Then I feel so accomplished and so happy, and the person leaves happy. And it's like, wow, I didn't see this one coming. And they look at their photos and like, I love myself. And if that's the only thing I did that day, to let somebody look at themselves and say, like, actually, or even I like myself. Let's say those hypercritical people, like, I like myself in this photo. Well, then I created a little bit more peace on earth, because that person goes home happy. He's not going to bitch. People bitch at each other because they're unhappy. If you love yourself, you let the other person be. It's all good. So I think, well, if that's something I can give to people, then I shall do this on a daily basis.
You bring up a good point, because I'm an amateur photographer. I like to do it as a hobby. I haven't really progressed to marketing myself out there. And, I've done some senior photos. I've done a lot of my nieces and nephews. And one of the things I find out is just like what you said, if you can make them feel comfortable, if you can make them feel happy, they're more coachable in a way, and they're more at ease about the whole situation. So that's really cool that you take this all into your approach, and the way you approach them is really, really fascinating.
Oh, there's a lot of psychology to it. A lot of psychology. Because then you need to rip it out of the context. Right? When you meet a celebrity, don't talk about celebrity-dom. Oh, how is it to be a celebrity? Boring. No. Talk about dog shit. Talk about, hey, how do I get the dog shit off my sofa without it smelling? Oh, I have a dog too. Normal stuff. And then the conversation goes somewhere else, and you have common ground. And lead the conversation off to something else. Like two screenwriters to come up with a story, they don't sit down and talk about, hey, writing screenplays, let's talk about how to write screenplays. No, that's not what they do. They talk about dragons and girls, and that the dragon sits on the gold. How do you tame the dragon? So you go into, you lead it away, and that's the fun of it. But there's, of course, like with people, also a lot of I wouldn't say hypnotherapy, but there's a thing called Neuro-Linguistic Programming that helps. So if I got inspired by Darren Brown with this. So if I can use certain words like good or confident and powerful, and I use these words frequently. Just, it was a good day, and Jonathan, how it feels when you're really confident. So much fun when the last time you kicked ass, you killed it, man. You stood straight, remember when isn't that fun when you're in that state? That's always a good state, because there's nothing that you can do is wrong. And I would just talk just like that, just bubbling while I'm setting up camera and testing exposures, just to program the brain with positive stuff. And that's one element, and there's many, many, many other layers how you have people become unpretentious. Because most of the people, you put a camera on them, they start posing. And when they start posing, you lose every grain of authenticity. And I always think the status, or the most important ingredient in a good portrait is the absence of pretense. So if somebody's pretending, it's okay. But when you get them somewhere that they're so relaxed that they just crash out, lean back, there's a natural reaction to what you say or what you do, and you snap that. Like I make you laugh and you have to giggle, like, well, that's pure authenticity. So this is the gold I'm after. Mm-hmm. And there's different ways to get there. Some people you need to exhaust until they're like, okay, there's so many shots. And then at the end, they're like, okay. And then you get your gold. Some people get their gold right out the gate before they even think about what they're doing. You got the gold in there, and then they find out, oh yeah, I'm in a photo shoot. Oh, I should give you my posy energy and do this, and then it's not as genuine. So yeah, there's lots of different ways lead to Rome, but it's a fun game.
That is so cool. That's so cool. And it's so fascinating how much thought you've actually taken into all this. And I really want to keep going into your thought processes, because I know there's going to be people who are going to be listening to the podcast or watching the video version of the podcast that are maybe just starting out or an amateur like me, but that may know some things, but want to get deeper into it. One of the first things I want to ask you directly is, what misconceptions do you think most people have about photography?
So, are you talking about people who are getting into it?
Correct.
And their
Correct.
misconceptions?
Correct.
So it's a craftsmanship. And that's what most of the people forget. Good marketers give them the illusion that the camera knows it all. And they think, oh, I buy a camera, a Nikon D6, $7,000. And they think this camera can do it now. The camera is just a device that makes click. It doesn't know anything. It doesn't know what you're up to. Here and there, because then that's what they do. They put it on automatic, right? Mm-hmm. And then they take a photo, and then all of a sudden they're disappointed that the photo doesn't look like what it looks like. And I think that to understand that it's kind of like playing an instrument. You don't sit at a piano and expect that you immediately can play the piano. You learn your piano, so it's a craft. Learn your craft. I see this a lot. Like there's in LA. LA is full of actors that just did it. That snapped a good shot from their friend who used to be a Gucci model. I'm like, hey, I'm a photographer. I know how to do this now because they did a few good photos. Now you send them somebody else who looks a little bit different, and then see what they do. And then all of a sudden you'll find out that they don't have that experience and that knowledge, and then they start screwing up. And it was like, whoa, that doesn't look like your guy, the guest model. Well, that was also not a difficult job. Let's get it straight. This guy looks great, first of all, in every lighting. And now with different faces, like a slightly overweight, brilliantly gifted Irish comedian with green eyes and very pale skin. Let's see what you do now with your lighting. Because every light temperature that hits her face will pick up. You shoot her in the trees, she'll be all green and look seasick. You shoot her just with the sky, then she looks too dark if you don't know the color compensation. So there's know your craft. Don't show up on the field offering your services when you don't know your craft.
Oh, yeah. One of the first things that I ran into, and I'm so blessed to actually have the opportunity to do it, is filming or actually taking photographs of darker complexions. And you don't realize how much you need an extra feel or a flash to really bring out, because you can get those harsh shadows, the darker the complexion is. And I didn't realize that, the first go around, the first time I was doing photography with somebody who has a darker complexion.
Darker complexion. Yeah, lighting's all about ratio, right? That's how I see it. How much comes from here, how much comes from there. And when the darker the skin, actually, I think the more forgiving it is. I love dark skin. Walk in the park. The light skin one, that's a tough one. That's when you really got to know your color temperatures in here. Because there's so much natural color tone in dark skin. So the skin tone alone is there. You just don't screw it up, just let it be. It's so easy. It's so easy. Like African Americans, they eat, like for me, technically, walk in the park, love it. It's the easiest thing there is. But you want to know your exposure. Here's the thing. It's not necessarily, I don't agree that you necessarily don't need an extra flash. You just need to calculate that you have to open up the iris a bit more, or you need a longer shutter speed. That you do. Unless you have a group shot and they're standing next to the Chinese guy. Different scenario. Then we need another flash.
Gotcha.
But standalone, a single portrait, which is the majority of my stuff, I love it. It's just pop the ISO a little bit higher. Easy, done.
Well, that's really cool.
So,
you mentioned color temperature, and one of the things that I was going to ask is later down in my notes here, but I'm going to ask it now, is how important is it to white balance your camera? Do you do it before the session, on every session, or do you just let it set to automatic?
Never automatic. Remember, 1980,
right?
Automatics for losers.
Well, you see some cameras
that was drilled into my hard drive. Unerasable.
Even in manual mode on some of these newer cameras, the light temperature is still in auto mode in some cases. So that's why I was bringing that up.
Well, that's exactly the thing, because when you see, I don't shoot much raw, only if it's a high risk job. Most of my jobs, I know what I'm doing. And let's get it straight. Everybody wants to email JPEGs back and forth. A raw image is very helpful when you don't know what you do. When you shoot raw image, you can basically rescue everything. But let's say, so when I drill my assistants, they need to know the skin tone. So it's a feeling. And that's an artistry. If it was that easy, oh God, everybody would be so badass, but they're not. Because it's just a little developing a taste and knowing that when you're, for instance, a Latino, so Latinos or Asians have a lot of more green pigments in their skin. So now you play with the white temperature, with the white balance, and you shoot a test photo, and that's what I do. I look at it, I'll go a bit up, go a bit warmer. Now it looks seasick. It will turn up very yellow.
Right.
So now when you have the seasick issue, what you can do with Nikon, Canon at least, and I think most of the cameras can do that too, you can have a tint correction that goes from green to magenta. So what I do is I stay at the color temperature that I tested. I'm like, 6,000, around the 6,000. This looks good, but it's still too greenish. It looks seasick. Then I go into a sub-filter system and put a magenta filter in it. And then all of a sudden, I almost even overdo it a little bit. So then, now my Latino looks really healthy, like with a red skin. And it's easier when it's really rich red tint to bring that red out. That's easy. If it's all pissy yellow, you lost. You screwed up.
That's really good advice. Really, really good advice.
So you like, but I really believe it. Just look through the monitor. I know you shouldn't. And there's all those know-it-alls that you run into at Sammy's camera, and they tell you, you should know it. Like, yeah, whatever, dude. I shoot so many people. And I know my monitor balance. I know what it looks like on the screen. I know what I'll be getting. So I look at it and I'm like, not there. So I play. Sometimes I do 10 test shots while I'm talking, click, and I look at my display and I maintain the conversation with you. And then I see, it's still too greenish. Let's put my magenta in there. And that does the trick. It can also be the other way around. There's a skin tone where you have to add more greens. Or depending what light you put in. See, I have all these different lights. But the temperature of the light is a different. Lots of people get these video lights, right? Those $100 sets from China. And they set up their soft boxes, and they have these fluorescent green lights in there, or LEDs. And then most of them, you look seasick. They're all very green. So when friends look, hey, can you help me to set up my self-tape thing? I want to put myself on film for an acting audition. I'm like, okay, what you got? Yeah, it looks so seasick. I'm like, yeah. Because you have these cheap lights, they're not color balanced, but you can balance that in the camera by adding magenta in the camera.
That is cool.
And then it looks healthy and fun and nice.
That is cool. That is, I'm learning so much already but hearing some of your theories. This is really, really fascinating to me. And one of the things that you hear about is people talking about how hard it is to shoot in manual. And I really don't think I actually have fun with it. I actually went and started shooting manual a few years ago. I was doing the aperture priority or shutter priority beforehand, and just really starting to shoot in manual and just trying to figure out, okay, here's this, ISO setting. Here is this shutter speed and aperture, in finding out that you can get the same effect, with variations all the way down, from the high end to the low end of how you set those settings. And it's just a matter of how you want to approach the shot, what you're looking for. Are you looking for something that it's going to be pretty stable? So, you're going to have a slow shutter speed, are you going to have a fast shutter speed? So you're going to need more light.
That's why I say this is a craftsmanship. If you want to become a carpenter, you have to learn all the different woods. Why can I put a screw in here? And what happens then if you use this saw? I consider myself a craftsman in the first place. Sure, I'd like to create something that is artistic, but the skill itself of a portraitist, that's a craft. You can learn that even if you have zero talent. I can teach you that, and I can teach you a light language, and you will speak it like you speak another language, and you develop a feeling for that language. Same goes for a carpenter or a cook, for that matter. We all have the same spices in the kitchen, but to cook something nice, how much of this, how much of that? You want to put salt and caramel? Go do it. Don't overdo it. How much of this light comes in? How much is the ratio between this and that? How steep's the kicker? How much chili in the chocolate? Tastes great when it's the right amount. You overdo it, you screw the dish up. So a cook learns with experience. So I think the same applies for photography. And that's the illusion sometimes that people think, oh, photography, I can do, I'm a photographer. I'm like, let's see. And then there's the guys who really get into it, and then they test and what you did. And then you learn your instrument. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer of that you get better every time you play around with it. Do something with it every day. You get good at it, and then it's fun to be good at something. And then you also feel more confident, and and then when you show up for work, see, all I'm doing is how Jason Bateman worded it in a podcast with Dex Shepard, which I loved. He said, I show up on set of Ozark when I'm directing, and all I want to do is not screw up. I want to bring the story home, solid, good images, and bring the story home. And sometimes you're there, and the magic unfolds itself in front of the camera while the actors are doing their thing. And the same goes for me. Like the cool stuff, the awesome photos that I've done so far, they happened because I showed up for work. And I just deliver a solid image. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, wow. Oh, wait. Look. Oh, and then an idea comes. I can make this decision. Oh, this looks fantastic. So, yeah. So it's consistency, craftsmanship, all these things that, of course, young kids don't want to hear. I didn't want to hear it back then when I was a kid, but that's what I was taught, and I think it still applies.
Absolutely. So I'm going to stop real quick too, and apologize too, but all the audio is saved, but I just noticed my recording was not going for this conference for the video. So all the audio we're hearing, I'm still capturing it.
That's the most important thing.
Yes,
right?
That's the most important thing. It really is for this. The video I do is a side thing. And
it's not like you're Joe Rogan.
Correct. Exactly.
Like,
I would have been freaking out right now. And I was like, holy
Joe
crap.
Rogan has Elon Musk, and the camera is like, oh, dude, I forgot to.
But I am going to kind of start it just so I can get maybe something we talk about and do clips.
Now it's doing a countdown.
Yeah. I was like, holy crap. I was like, because typically I start it right before I let the people in so that it started recording in case there's something that happens. And I must have hit.
We all work in entertainment. We all work in entertainment. We know how it is.
It's
you
like,
you start
it is.
your job expecting that everything goes according to the plan. But like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And this is when something goes wrong.
Absolutely.
And it can happen to all of us.
Absolutely.
It always does.
Bjoern, when you're thinking about developing your shots and in your sessions, how much thought goes into everything you do? How much planning, are you just winging it each time? I mean, how much thought and process actually goes into each one of your sessions?
Depends on the job. So when, for instance, my music jobs, there is way more storyboarding, so to say. There's way more concept. Like I've just recently shot a music video with an amazingly gifted actress and singer, Nina Berkman. So then you sit down before and discuss what you're going to do. Or when you shoot a band, shot this girl band, very talented girls, Crimson Apple. So they show me images that they like. I tell them what I like, and then we create the concept together. So then you have at least a rough destination where the boat wants to go. And then there's still room for something that happens along the way, which is always fun when I look through the lens like, oh, wow, what if we turn the hazing machine on and there's a little fog, kind of like pastelic energy to it. And then we look through it and think it's great, and then we do it. But this wasn't planned. Planned was another shot. So it's always good to have a plan. Some photo shoots where people just show up like, I have this a lot, and just take a picture of me, man. I just want to have a good energy. I just want to like me. I'm like, okay, good. We can do that too. And then I just kind of play around, like for me, easy because I'm doing it for so long. So I do this for over 20 years. So it's kind of like an experienced cook. So I have a lot of recipes that I have up my sleeve, and I can improvise a dish for you and see, let's see how he's vibing with this. Let's do that. And then you just play. And so when the objective is, I just want to have a captivating image of myself, then everything justifies the means. So I just try it out until I see something that ticks me. I'm like, okay, this looks good for you. That looks good for you. But probably most of let's see, over 50% usually is in a kind of cinematic context.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I told you earlier, that inspired me the most. I was always way more fascinated by watching a cinematographer at work than a photographer, like those fashion photographers that bring up all their strobes and I was like, everything's posy, everything's so lame. It's all this contrived stuff. With cinematographers, first of all, light aesthetic wise, they do backlighting.
Oh, yeah.
You want to create cool images? Use backlighting, and trust me, it will improve your game so much. And also artistically, shoot against the sun. Have it to hit the lens. Sometimes you find out wonderful stuff and beautiful accidents. And because most of the people would say, oh, no, have the sun in the back. And there's always the know-it-alls, right? You all have friends who are like, oh, I know how to do that. And in the end, they don't. But they think they do. And they tell the others how to do it with their wisdom. And when you show up, I'm like, do what you're not supposed to do. Switch it.
You know what? Some of the most iconic movie posters of all time have been those silhouettes where you see the sun in the background, and then your subject's still in the foreground towards the sun, and you see these iconic kind of images just come out of that silhouette.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, every time on Instagram when I like something on other accounts, I noticed it's backlighting. Backlighting in haze, coastal haze, morning haze, creates layers in mountains, makes the sun visible, the light rays come through a cathedral, or it's these two elements that I use so much in my photos too. I got a hazer, $200, that does the trick. You can spend $5,000 on a hazer if you want to, if you want the haze to stay in the room for like 30 minutes. That's what they use on big movie sets. But for me, I just need it there for like 3 to 4 minutes. Then some haze I bought at the Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard will totally do the trick for $200. And just
Absolutely.
I put it behind a fan. So then I shoot my lights. Like I use, these like old movie lights that you see there in the background, stuff like that, right? I'll take this thing out of the way here. See these old movie lights?
Yes.
That stuff. This is when you shoot those lights against, kind of almost against the lens. And then with the haze, the light beam becomes visible. And that's the fun of it. It's just, one way to magic. But backlighting for your listeners, and like, I want to get good at it as a photographer, backlighting as much as you. And then you have the key light, but if the backlighting is great, you can sometimes create just a silhouette, as you said, and it's a beautiful artistic photo, and you don't even need a key light for the foreground.
Absolutely.
And sometimes the key light can make it cheesy. Then people use their strobes and shoot against the sunset in Hawaii, and they use the strobe that's on top of the camera. And then you get the red eye and the greasy skin, and because they were sweating, and you're just like, God, this thing, that looks cheesy. Yeah. So much more fun if somebody held, just like when you shoot against the sun, if you just hold something wide up, or stand in front of a building that reflects the sun, or hold up just like a white sheet, like styrofoam or a reflector or something, not a mirror reflector, just a white sheet. That can help. it makes it a bit more natural. Of course, if you have movie lights like I do, or like certain equipment and know how to use it, you create something awesome with the key light. But for an amateur, yeah, backlighting.
And you know what's fascinating is that you're mentioning all this, but when you go on to the other side of the spectrum where it's kind of darker, kind of like noir kind of photography, they still use the backlights, but they use a focal, a stronger focal light on their subject sometimes to get that kind of good hard contrast.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're on that level of professionalism,
right?
That is already like borderline somebody who knows a little bit more than a regular amateur. If you start that would be probably you, right? You would bring in a strobe,
yes,
and maybe a diffuser or a beauty dish or a chimera or something, and then of course that's the ultimate. If you have backlighting and you have enough lumens and light fixtures to create the key light, well, then you're in heaven. Then you can create magnificent stuff. Which doesn't mean that just backlit silhouette is not cool either.
Right. And do you incorporate like the bokeh effect in the background as well, or do you just do whatever you feel like is probably suits that picture?
Whatever suits that picture.
Yeah.
It's all like, I think it's a very intuitive thing. But my intuition, of course, is different because I've done 14,000 photo shoots. So my intuition has been subconsciously improved every day through my experience. So the intuition of somebody who's done 5 photo shoots is different than somebody who's done 1,000 photo shoots. Mm-hmm. When the 5 photo shoot person goes, oh, I feel like doing this, but he has no empirical knowledge and background, he might screw it up, which is totally cool. But let's say when you're on the job and you have an experienced photographer who's done 1,000 photo shoots, and when he has an intuitive sense of I would try this, it's based on his subconscious knowledge. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a whole book about that phenomena called blink, that it's an unconscious thing. So you're not really aware of it, but somehow your brain has processed all these thousands of hours of photo shoots and learned no, this doesn't work. That could work. This could work. And what then is intuition, when you say, oh, maybe we should try this, I would always listen to a cinematographer or a photographer who's done 1,000 hours on a set instead of the guy who's just done 10. So that's a little bit an advantage that I have by doing it for so long. Right.
You do pick up on things. I mean, with practice, you hear about the 10,000 hour theory to become a master, and when you're learning a musical instrument or anything like that too. One of the things that I also kind of want to pick up on, because it kind of touches on based on something you said earlier, which is getting the shot right. Getting the shots that you want, especially in camera, and then make it, and when you have it, it looks just like it's just fantastic photo on its own. But, in today's digital age, a lot of people want to go to post-production, go into, Photoshop, go into Lightroom or some similar program to enhance the photos. It is. And in some cases, it becomes a crutch, I think. Because if you don't get the photo just right, you can tweak it and make something else out of it. But there's nothing wrong with making art. I don't get that. I don't have that. But what is your approach when you shoot a photo? Is it try to get it right every single time, or do you have to?
Post.
Huh?
Don't rely on post.
Don't rely on post.
Don't rely on post. Shoot the image as close as possible to what you think is the end result. That's because. Also for me, time-wise, I work so much, I don't have the time to tweak around that long with so many images. So sometimes I kind of butcher them a little bit. I'm like, that's great, just needs this, a little skin tone correction and that. But overall, I would say, don't rely on that you can do everything in the post. I see that by editor friends. It's the same with I shoot your music video, and then they use their iPhones and shoot some stuff, and it's horrible. And even the best editor in the world cannot make anything of it. So, again, know your craft. be a good craftsman.
Oh yeah.
Just deliver something. When you, like, even in carpentry, you just have a tree. It was like, oh, it's going to be a table. No, it's not. There's so much necessary to make a table out of this tree. So you gotta at least shoot something that looks like a table with that tree that that in post-production you can do it. But here's something else though. What I recently inspired me are those people that do composites.
Oh yes, that's what I was going to bring up too.
That is fun, and I'm very tempted to do that. Again, it requires a lot of logic. So when you shoot the different elements for one photo, so you shoot a guy and you want him kind of Game of Thrones like on a cliff. And you want the waves splashing. So, but everything mathematically has to make sense when you shoot those plates. That the distance, the perspective to the cliff. So just some random photo that you grab off some stock photo website most likely will not do the trick. So don't forget the perspective on it. But if it's well done, I love composites.
Oh, I do too.
Every movie posters are composites, and that's my ultimate goal, that you drive on Sunset and you see all the photos I've shot and they're movie posters. That's my, everybody's got that end game kind of thing. That's for me. I want to shoot the Will Smith movie poster.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, because like one of the avenues I'd like to take eventually is like the fantasy photography. Taking the initial shot and then doing the composites on top of it, because I think it's so fascinating. I follow YouTube tutorials on how to make posters, and do that and try to replicate on my own and make my own versions of those. And I've been successful to a degree on some of them. Some of them are really, really advanced, and you've really got to take your time and learn Photoshop and learning how the color spectrum works different a lot of times in the layers when you're overlaying and, when you're multiplying, or depending on how you're wanting the opacity to pass through that particular image. So, I mean, there's a lot to it. And again, learning your craft.
Absolutely. Yep, that's the same thing. If you paint a wall in a different way, like backdrop painting, right? So that's what, I'm into. And I thought, oh, it's easy. We created ourselves. No, it's not that easy. Sometimes you can be lucky. Same with photography. Then you find out, there's a little bit more to it than just, putting sponges and rollers on the wall, that it looks like a beautiful artistic backdrop. So that same goes for the composite. Then you dig deep, and then you get, with everything in life, it's your video game, whatnot, you want to get really good at it, you got to dig. And when you dig deep, then you find the gold, because you don't give up, and you get better and better and better, and sure enough, then you come at a point where you find the gold.
Oh yeah.
And you learn the whole time. I mean, hey, the difference between the master and the student is that the master had so much, he fucked up so many times, and he learned from it. That's the point. We all do mistakes. And the master made the most mistakes of all of them. That's why he is so wise and has all the knowledge.
That's a good way of looking at it. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, that is really, really cool.
So every time you make a mistake, it's good. You get better every time you make a mistake, because that you'll never do again. I have a story where I shot a big German movie star. His name is Til Schweiger. I was so excited. And this is back in the film days. I had rented a Hasselblad, which is kind of a Rolls-Royce of film cameras. I rented all this badass equipment. My buddy had a big villa in Malibu, so I'm like, wow, I'm making this happen. So I wanted to shoot a Polaroid. Back then, there was no digital. So I put a Polaroid back on the Hasselblad, and you're supposed to take that metal plate in between the back and the camera out, so that the Polaroid can be exposed from the camera. So there's a simple metal plate that you put on there when you change the back, and then remove it. I forgot to remove it. So I do the Polaroid, comes out, and you wait 90 seconds, and we're standing on the balcony, we're talking, this and that, and I kind of played a little bit the whatever guy I was at the time that I wasn't. Anyhow, we're talking stuff, and so then I look at the Polaroid, and it's black. Oh, that was so embarrassing. I totally screwed up. What is the music on? Echo, shut up.
It thought you needed background music. It's like, you talking too long, we're going to start shutting you up. That's exactly what it
I
said.
probably said something. My assistant is brilliant. He said everything up here, and this is my new. I bought a loft here in Atlanta, because we're expanding.
Right.
So this loft is all so intelligent.
Oh, that's really cool, though. Oh, that's fascinating.
Echo.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to change directions just a little bit and do something that's a little, off key. When you're not shooting and you're not involved in your day-to-day operations of being a photographer, what do you do for fun?
I used to ride horses, but then my horse died last year, so that's a 15-year hobby, and I got so busy with photography that I'm probably not going to get another horse at the moment. So I started piano during COVID, which I love.
Oh, that's really cool.
Because I'm over 50, and when you feel your brain's not all the time up to par, time to do brain training.
Mm-hmm.
And all the research points to one thing: learn an instrument. It sharpens your brain, it creates neuroplasticity, everything. So, and piano is fun. I mean, I get a kick out of a nice chord progression,
Right.
I'm not very skilled yet, but a nice chord progression is just fun. So that's momentarily, if I'm not working on photos or anything related to photography, or maybe by riding my bicycle or hiking and stuff, I probably play piano.
That's really cool to think about, just doing something new like that and changing the way your brain thinks.
Really cool. I did it first really pragmatically. I was challenging my brain. I'm like, let's do it with something fun. And I love the piano. I love a nice chord progression. It's just, sometimes it's very simple things that can sound so beautiful. And then, of course, then I have more and more, I download more and more piano music because I want to play it myself. I'm like, oh, I could play this. But I cannot play the soundtrack of Soul, which just won an Oscar, which is so awesome.
It is good.
Oh, such a good movie. I can't stop raving. I love that. Everything about it. And the piano especially. Yeah.
So this next question is going to be kind of blasphemy, I guess, in a way. If you could never be a photographer anymore, what would you do?
Probably be a coach or a motivational coach.
Oh, that's really interesting. Why?
Because I'm doing this already a lot with what I do. Because, see, it's all about the state in which you're in. And the state in which you're in determines the energy that, or determines a little bit the outcome of your session. And if I can get you in a good state, you are most likely outdo yourself, or something good comes out of it. And also the state is very important to visualize your future, to use your mind energy to create future. I mean, now it's getting very metaphysics, but that's what I absolutely believe is crucially important. And then creating a mindset and a knowledge and a wisdom with people that they can actually live a happy life and don't hate so much anymore.
That is so cool and
Hate
inspiring.
and anger are just such unpleasant frequencies and states. And there's ways how you can actually train yourself the same way how you can train yourself to get better at something. You can get better at being a person. I think so.
Wow, that's cool. It's really deep. I love the way you think. I really, really do. If you were going to give any advice to any up and coming photographer or anybody that wanted getting into photography, what advice would you give them?
Play, have fun. Every time when you make a mistake, smile and say like, good, now I found this one out. Like that's what I do with my assistants. When they make obvious mistakes at the beginning, I'm like, awesome. See, you made a mistake. Life didn't end. And now we do it again. Like it's because they're so part of it, and when you're afraid of failing, you're not gonna go anywhere. So you gotta, if you have somebody on your side who says, "Oh, you made a mistake," awesome. I'm so stoked for you. That means you're getting better now. This is the most exciting thing. So don't be afraid and do it. Practice it, kind of like an instrument. Play with it. Play with it. It's a toy. And you play with the toy or that instrument, kind of like you play with the clarinet, your piano or whatnot, every day, you will get better at it. So, and play with manual. Automatic is for losers, man.
It's kind of like Bob Ross's approach too. Happy little accidents. Happy little accidents. That is so cool, man. It has been such a pleasure to sit here and talk with you, Bjoern, because I mean, you're so, like I said, I keep saying it, but I love the way you think. I love how your approach is to everything, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely, it was totally my pleasure. I loved it.
This episode of Itch Your Break was not a paid advertisement. Follow Jonathan Mertz on Twitter at Jonathan Mertz. That's JONATHANMERTZ. Follow Itch Your Break on Twitter at Itch Your Break. Subscribe to the Itch Your Break podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the iHeartRadio app. This episode of Itch Your Break was hosted, announced, engineered, edited, and produced by Jonathan Mertz. And it was recorded and produced at the Spark of Vision Studios. All sound effects and music were purchased through Sound Ideas, Pro Sound Effects, iStock, and Spark of Vision. Itch Your Break is owned and distributed by Spark of Vision. Copyright Itch Your Break. All rights reserved.